want to take you back to September 28th, 2021. I had 3 panic attacks in one day. I had hit my rock bottom. I was hurting, I was broken, and I couldn't go on living that way. Turns out though, that breakdown was more of a breakthrough. That experience taught me that pain can be a gift. Hi, I'm Kris Glenn, and I'm here today to talk about 3 things that I've learned in my life that I hope that you can use in your own life. Number 1, embracing your pain. 2, the power of vulnerability. And 3, living an authentic, purposeful life. I truly believe that our deepest contribution also comes out of our deepest pain. I turned 40 in March of 2021, and the year between 40 and 41 was one of the most difficult seasons that I've ever experienced. But because of the storm, not in spite of it, my life now has so much more meaning and such a greater sense of purpose and happiness. We will get to the details of those 3 panic attacks that day in September later on. But first, let me tell you about what led up to my midlife reckoning. Let's start at the beginning. I grew up in a small town in southern Oklahoma called Hilton, also hometown of Rue McClanahan, aka Blanche from the Golden Girls. Both of our names are on the local water tower there in Hilton. Mine is just in spray paint. I had a great childhood. My parents were awesome. I was a good student and athlete in high school. In college, I was a high jumper on the track and field team at the University of Oklahoma. That was about 50 pounds ago. As a journalism major at OU, I even had a story that made the New York Times. After college, I began my career at my alma mater at OU. Around this time, I also met the love of my life and now my wife, Casey. Life was good. My dad was turning 50 in 2007, and he looked great for his age. He was always very active, very much an outdoorsman. He was a man's man. He was my dad, but he was also my hero. He was a great husband, the best dad. He had a work ethic that was untouchable. 3 months later, he was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive blood cancer called multiple myeloma. And that brings me to my first point, embracing your pain. My dad fought cancer like only he could, with everything that he had. I don't think anyone else could have battled that cancer for more than 18 months with such dignity, grace, and humility. He never complained. He never asked, "Why me?" I watched him go from this muscular, good-looking man to a frail shell of himself. This particular cancer was a special kind of evil. It took calcium out of his bones and eventually paralyzed him by fracturing his neck. It was devastating to watch. I began to shut down around this time, and I turned to alcohol to escape, but more on that later. I was by his side when he took his last breath in January 2009. There's not a day that goes by that I don't miss my dad. I started dating Casey a few months before he died. We got married 2 months after he died. The wedding was the first of many things he would miss. More importantly, he never got to meet his grandkids, and let me tell you, he would love Lily and Vincent Glenn. Drinking was an issue for me before my dad was diagnosed with cancer, but it became a full-blown problem after that. I almost couldn't visit him in the hospital without drinking first. I remember drinking a 6-pack of beer in the Mercy Hospital parking lot one time before visiting him, and I just stared up at that neon cross as I drank. I felt so ashamed looking up at that cross, but I did it anyway. It was the only way I knew how to cope with the situation. It was probably worse after he died. I remember drinking right after the funeral, and I remember drinking the entire next day too. Anytime a tough feeling or emotion came up after he died, I drank. That Christmas was our first Christmas as a married couple. It was also the first Christmas without my dad. I was adamant we would spend it with my family, even though there was a blizzard. We made the 1-hour drive to my hometown in about 5 hours. And I don't know why I was so hell-bent on driving through the blizzard to get there. because all I did was drink beer and stare at the wall at my grandma's house. That was 2009. I got this tattoo on December 11th, 2012. It was to signify that I would never drink again. That morning, I'd woken up yet again with a hangover. I started thinking back throughout the year, and I couldn't remember a single day in the previous 8 months that I didn't drink. I made it less than a month sober after getting this tattoo. I continued to drink fairly heavily for almost 4 more years. I drank at every possible emotion, grief, anxiety, stress, but also to celebrate anything and everything. I drank at any event that served alcohol and really didn't want to go to something that didn't have alcohol. I created a life of the party persona pretty early on in my drinking career, but my favorite drinking was alone, primarily so no one could see or judge how much I was drinking. I can't count the number of times that I drank and drove. It's truly a miracle I didn't get a DUI or hurt someone. I'm just truly grateful that neither happened. Even though I spent many days hungover, for the most part, I was high functioning and outwardly fine. I had a good job, a great family, I had a good life, but I wasn't fine. Not by a long shot. I had a drinking problem, and it wasn't until I developed crushing anxiety in the middle of the night after drinking that I knew that I needed to change, that I needed to get sober. While the anxiety was absolutely awful, it was truly a blessing. I don't know that I would have sought sobriety without it. I couldn't keep going the way that I was. People don't change until they experience enough pain, and I was in a lot of mental and emotional pain. At the bottom of everyone's addiction, there is always pain. Discovering that pain and healing it is an essential step in ending the dependency. I felt an internal nagging in August of 2016 to finally get sober. That also coincided with our family going back to church. By the grace of God, the support of my family, and a lot of personal growth, I mostly quit drinking that August almost 6 years ago, except for a few very minor relapses. Sobriety is rarely linear. Today, I have just over 1 year totally sober, the longest continuous sobriety I've ever had. And for that, I'm so grateful. I know I'm the best version of myself when I don't drink. I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better person, I'm a better son. Sobriety is a powerful choice, not some sad consequence. It's not that I don't get to ever drink again, it's that I don't have to ever drink again. Instead of numbing and escaping pain, stress, and anxiety, I face life head on. I feel more alive than ever. It's not always easy, but it is always worth it. Addiction and mental health issues aren't what I envisioned for my life. But when things go wrong, that's a teachable moment. That's when you meet who you really are and your character is revealed. Well, 2021 certainly revealed my character. Even before September 28th, things were off. I have always struggled with performance anxiety, whether it was before a big track meet or public speaking, just typical nerves, and obviously the anxiety I had from drinking, but I never experienced general anxiety over seemingly nothing. Until I did. The year started with the COVID death of my mom's longtime boyfriend, Roger, who was basically my stepfather. Then I got COVID and was recovering right before my 40th birthday, which little did I know my 40th birthday was subconsciously freaking me out. It was the perfect storm for a midlife unraveling. Also, I now realize that Roger's death triggered some unresolved issues and old wounds from my dad dying. Before I knew it, I was anxious almost daily for no reason at all, and it was awful. I woke up anxious, I went to bed anxious, and sometimes when it reached a boiling point, I had full-on panic attacks. If you've never had a panic attack, it feels like you're dying. I wouldn't wish one on my worst enemy. You feel like you can't breathe, The walls are closing in. You're suffocating. And the worst part, you can't talk. And for me, that's a problem. Like no words can come out of your mouth. At least that's how mine felt. It was excruciating. I felt trapped in my own skin. This went on for months, and I never said anything to anyone. I just wished the anxiety away, and it would come back every day. Finally, one day about a month into it, I told my wife that I was experiencing some anxiety. I didn't tell her the full extent of it, at least not then anyway. I asked her one day if she could tell I was anxious. She said I seemed normal. That's the hell of anxiety. I felt like I was dying on the inside, and I appeared totally fine to everyone around me. It got to the point that I was getting anxious about the possibility about getting anxious. I was so scared that I would have a panic attack that I would work myself into a panic attack. It was a vicious cycle that would spiral out of control. It was irrational, but it was also overwhelming. In late July of 2021, Casey and I were just sitting in a restaurant having lunch. It was a great day. We'd been working out in the yard all day. We took a break for lunch. There was no reason to be anxious. Yet as we were sitting there, I felt my chest tighten, my breaths get shorter, and my words starting to fail me. I just blurted out that I was so anxious. For the first time, I came clean to her about the extent of my anxiety. I was suffering in silence before I opened up to her. That's how powerful anxiety can be. It lies to you that even your own wife wouldn't understand. As we got into the car after lunch, I just cried and told her that I was scared. I was sorry I was like this, and I didn't want her to leave me because of it. She couldn't have been more supportive that day and every day since. She reassured me that I was fine and that we were fine. Things got better, but the anxiety still wasn't totally gone. But the most important thing is I wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that brings us to September 28th, 2021. I had a panic attack in the morning before going to meet with my daughter's teacher, another one at lunch before going to meet with my former boss, and then finally while talking to Casey on the phone in the afternoon. It was too much. I had reached my breaking point. I was exhausted. I couldn't go on living like that. Again, people don't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. I raised my hand that day and said I needed help, real help. I was so scared about the stigma around needing a therapist or even medication. But I was even more scared about living my life the way that I was. I started seeing a therapist around the same time I told my primary care physician that I probably needed to start taking a daily medication for anxiety. Both of those decisions were two of the best choices that I've ever made. Life didn't get better immediately, but gradually I started having good days. I was having anxiety-free days. I started turning good days into good weeks, and good weeks became good months. In hindsight, this breakdown was a long time coming. I never dealt with my dad's death. I tried to numb it away, drink it away. You have to take life as it comes at you and not stuff your emotions and feelings down. They will come up eventually. It might take years or even decades, but unresolved trauma will rear its head. It took me 13 years to finally get professional help. I believe God brought anxiety into my life for me to finally deal with what I should have more than a decade ago. Everything happens for a reason. I still have some anxiety from time to time, but I've learned that it passes, that it's all going to be okay. It's also important for me to remember these truths. I have survived everything in life that I never thought I would. I have made it through 100% of my bad days. Everything I was terrified I would never get through, I did, and you have too. I know that I'm not alone when it comes to pain. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, childhood trauma, a divorce, whatever it is, no one is getting out of life without pain and discomfort. Your thing may not be losing a parent, panic attacks, or even alcohol. But I bet that you saw parts of your story in my story and that you have a thing of your own. If you want to get better, if you want to get through your darkest days, you have to get honest and vulnerable with people. Those people will meet you where you are. That is the power of vulnerability. And that is my second point. Before we go any further, let's define vulnerability so we're all on the same page. Vulnerability guru, and someone I'm a big fan of, Brené Brown, defines it as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's that unstable feeling we get when we step out of our comfort zone or do something that forces us to loosen control. She goes on to say that vulnerability is excruciating but necessary. She says it is not a sign of weakness, but our most accurate measure of courage. I couldn't agree more. Without vulnerability, I wouldn't have got better. I wouldn't have opened up to Casey. I wouldn't have sought professional help. I wouldn't be here talking to you today. We put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, like we have it all together. Vulnerability means choosing to show up as our true selves, even if we're not sure of the outcome. I now accept all parts of myself, even the anxiety. Vulnerability has taught me that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. It's taught me that bad days are normal. More than anything, I believe that vulnerability is the key to connection. If you want to improve your mental health, be the real you, and truly connect with people, you have to practice vulnerability, and it is a practice. You have to get honest and maybe a little uncomfortable, but you'll be so glad that you did. I feel like vulnerability is directly tied to authenticity. So let's finish up today by talking about my third and final point, living an authentic and purposeful life. How many times in your life have you ever had these thoughts? If I just get this job, then I'll be happy. When I get this new house, then I'll feel content. Man, if I had this many Instagram followers, then I'll feel important. As hard as it is to admit, I know I have. The truth is, those things only feel good for a little while. They never have the long-term life-changing effects that we imagine. That's because life is so much more than accumulation, more than your bank account, more than social media followers. By the way, there's actually people out there now buying Instagram followers. Like, that's a thing. Trust me, I'm not pointing fingers when I bring up these topics. I've been there and have firsthand experience with all of this. Well, except for the part about buying Instagram followers. I've never done that. But what I can tell you is the first half of my life was all about success, all about achievement, all about me. I chased awards, recognition, and of course, money. And it was all driven by ego. I climbed the wrong mountain. Life is not about hitting every external milestone. It's about the journey you take with yourself, and most importantly, with others. I want the rest of my life to be about my faith, my family, service to others, and showing up as the best version of myself. And the best version of me has nothing to do with what kind of car I have in the driveway or my job title. It has everything to do with being more present, being more spiritual, being more giving, and practicing gratitude daily. So how did I get to this kind of way of living and perspective? Well, it took being brought to my knees by my anxiety to appreciate what really matters. It took being crushed by my mental health just to be thankful for an ordinary day. We all want the highlight reel of a life, but so much of what really matters, what really feels good deep in our soul, has nothing to do with what society and culture define as the good life. Stop chasing the big shiny things. You'll get a lot more out of helping a neighbor move a couch than you will coveting his Corvette. Make time for the phone call with your best friend. Help your mom bury her beloved cat when it dies. Oddly specific, I know, but you got to do what you got to do. Enjoy a cup of coffee on the front porch. Be present in your life. That's the good stuff. It's not uncommon to come to some of these realizations in midlife, but I want you to start imagining a different way of living wherever you are on your journey. I just hope that you don't have to have a breakdown to experience it. If you're 25 or if you're 75, it's time to be the real you and let go of what doesn't matter. And let me let you in on a secret. Only a few things really matter. Now, because of my breakthrough, and just getting older, I say no to most things. And because I do, I have so much more time for my family and the things I really enjoy. I would much rather go on a date with my wife than go to a networking event. Say no to good things so you can say yes to great things. I used to think work was everything. In many ways, I defined myself by my career. Now I know that if you're winning at work but losing at home, you're losing, period. You can make more money, you can build more influence, you can scale more companies, you can win more awards, you can achieve more success. But the years with your kids, you can never get back. These years will slip through your fingers if your hands are busy chasing things that matter a whole lot less. And really, we all just need to slow down. To heck with hustle culture. We need rest, deep soul rest. I'm not willing to compromise my mental health, my physical health, my family, my friends, or my quality of life for work. I'm just not. Burnout is not a badge of honor. In closing, I want to make sure you understand that none of this happened overnight for me, and it won't for you either. Nothing worth having ever does. You have to play the long game. If your journey is anything like mine, it will be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. That's okay. It's even healthy. The best way to make change is incrementally, little by little, day by day, over a period of time. People overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade. I want to say that again. People overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. I would never want to go back to September 28th, 2021, but I will always look at that day with respect and even gratitude. I finally dealt with my dad's death and leaned into my pain. When you avoid pain, you avoid meaning. It's never going to feel good when you're going through it, but pain will always teach you something. Every experience is preparing you for something. It's a dot on the map of where you're supposed to go. Life is happening for you, not to you. That bears repeating. Life is happening for you, not to you. So how would I sum up what I've learned on my healing journey on the other side of pain? This season of life forced me to realize that pain can be a gift, and this too shall pass. It also taught me to surrender the illusion of control and cling tightly to God. It also taught me to recognize what really matters and eliminate the rest. My faith has never been stronger. My marriage has never been better. I'm a present father, and family is everything. I now recognize relationships are more important than accomplishments. My career is something I do instead of an identity, and showing up for other people is what life is really about. That's my story. It can be your story too. You never know how close you are to your breakthrough. If you think your pain will never end, don't give up. Don't you dare give up. What you think is a breakdown just might be your breakthrough. Thank you.